185,000 soldiers couldn't defeat this angel. One of the greatest and most dramatic stories in the Bible, this event clearly reveals how God intervened in the affairs of his people. Our story centers around King Hezekiah and his striking battle against countless enemies. Despite the difficult conditions of his time, Hezekiah emerged as a strong and determined leader. Unlike his cruel father Ahaz, his 29-year reign was marked by fair governance, earning him extraordinary honor in the eyes of the Lord, following in the footsteps of his ancestor David. This story showcases not only the victory of one man but also the triumph of divine power. King Hezekiah, son of the wicked King Ahaz, began his reign at the age of 25 and ruled in Jerusalem for 29 years. His mother Abi was the daughter of Zechariah. Hezekiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, demonstrating a just rule similar to his ancestor David, 2 Kings 18 verse 13. Hezekiah was one of the few kings who supported the high places of worship. Additionally, he cut down the Asherah poles, symbols of paganism, and destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had made centuries earlier, known as the Nehushtan. These actions by Hezekiah symbolized not only physical purification but also spiritual renewal, once again demonstrating his value and faithfulness as a servant of the Lord. As described in 2 Kings 18 verse 9, after the bronze statues, the Lord instructed Moses to make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, so that anyone bitten by a serpent would live if they looked at it. Moses made a bronze serpent at the Lord's command and placed it on a pole. When someone was bitten by a serpent, looking at the bronze serpent would heal them. However, over time, this object used by God to save his people became an object of false worship. Hezekiah stood out as a king who recognized and was determined to correct this situation. His strict adherence to God's commands showed his superiority over other kings, 2 Kings 18 verses 4-5. He removed the high places, broke the sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and shattered the bronze serpent made by Moses. People burned incense to it and thus named it Nehushtan. Hezekiah was known for his trust in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah before or after him. After the unfaithfulness and cruel deeds of many kings, Hezekiah's reign was like a breath of fresh air. His reign was proof of his loyalty to God's commands. He succeeded wherever he went because the Lord was with him, 2 Kings 18 verses 6-16. He maintained his faithfulness to the Lord and never departed from him, so he succeeded in all his endeavors through God's grace. Just as the Lord ensured Hezekiah's success in every undertaking, Hezekiah rebelled against the king of Assyria, refusing to serve him. He defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its surroundings, including fortified cities. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah's reign, which was the 7th year of King Hoshea of Israel, King Sennacherib of Assyria marched against Samaria and besieged the city. 3 years later, Samaria was captured. This coincided with the 6th year of Hezekiah's reign. In the 9th year of King Hoshea of Israel's reign, the king of Assyria exiled the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Gozan by the river Habor and in the cities of the Medes. This was because the Israelites had not listened to the words of the Lord their God and had not obeyed his commands. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, King Sennacherib of Assyria attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. In response, King Hezekiah of Judah sent a message to the king of Assyria: "I have done wrong, withdraw from me, and whatever you demand I will pay." The king of Assyria demanded 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold from King Hezekiah. Hezekiah collected all the silver found in the Lord's temple and the royal palace treasures and sent it to the king of Assyria, removing the gold that covered the doors and doorposts of the Lord's temple. Despite Hezekiah's attempt to bribe the Assyrian king, the situation for Judah did not go as planned. King Sennacherib of Assyria attacked and captured all the fortified cities of Judah, leaving only Jerusalem. Hezekiah might have concluded that he had miscalculated. Having previously confessed to Sennacherib that he had acted wrongly and offered a ransom to prevent his people from sharing the same fate as Israel, Hezekiah had sent all the silver and gold he could find, even scraping gold from the temple. Things were about to get worse. To test Hezekiah's faith and show his own power to the people, God surrounded Jerusalem with Assyrian troops. During this difficult time, Hezekiah's leadership and faithfulness to God became a beacon of hope for the people of Judah. Sennacherib did not believe that Hezekiah's ransom was sufficient and was looking for an excuse to attack Jerusalem, despite sending an envoy. He sent a large army to demand the surrender of Jerusalem. King Hezekiah of Judah sent a message to the Assyrian king in Lachish, saying, "I have done wrong, withdraw from me, and whatever you demand I will pay." The Assyrian king then requested 10,000 talents of silver. Hezekiah gave him all the silver from the Lord's temple and the royal palace treasures, and removed the gold that covered the doors and doorposts of the temple, handing it over to the Assyrian king. The Assyrian king then sent his chief of staff, Rabshakeh, and other officials with a large army from Lachish to Jerusalem. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, they stopped at the aqueduct of the upper pool on the highway to the washerman's field. They called for Eliakim son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, along with Shebna the scribe and Joah son of Asaph the recorder. Rabshakeh said to them, "Say to Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says, what are you basing this confidence of yours on? You say you have counsel and might for war, but you speak only empty words. On whom are you depending, that you rebel against me? Look, I know you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, which pierces the hand of anyone who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who depend on him. But if you say to me, we are depending on the Lord our God, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Now make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses, if you can put riders on them. How then can you repulse one officer of the least of my master's officials, even though you are depending on Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Moreover, have I come to attack and destroy this place without word from the Lord? The Lord himself told me to march against this country and destroy it." 2 Kings 18 verses 26 to 30. 3 men had asked for the negotiations to be conducted in Aramaic, as they understood it, to protect the people on the wall from hearing threats. However, Rabshakeh ignored this and spoke in Hebrew, aiming to scare the people on the wall and dissuade them from trusting in Hezekiah's promises of deliverance. How much longer would the people of Judah continue to trust in their king? The Assyrian king said, "Do not listen to Hezekiah, make peace with me and come out to me. Then each of you will eat from your own vine and fig tree and drink water from your own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey. Choose life and not death. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for he is misleading you when he says, 'The Lord will deliver us.'" 2 Kings 18 verses 31 to 32. The envoy promised peace and prosperity in exchange for surrender, which might have seemed appealing to the besieged and isolated people of Jerusalem. The Assyrian king asked, "Have any of the gods of the nations ever delivered their lands from my hand? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? Have they rescued Samaria from my hand? Who of all the gods of these countries have been able to save their lands from me? How then can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand?" The people remained silent and said nothing in reply, because the king had commanded them not to answer. 2 Kings 18 verses 33 to 37. The speech ended with rhetorical questions, asserting that if the gods of the other nations could not save their lands from the Assyrian king, neither could the Lord save Jerusalem. The king's representatives, enraged by this encounter, tore their clothes and returned to Hezekiah. When King Hezekiah heard this distressing news, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and went into the Lord's temple. He sent Eliakim son of Hilkiah, Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests, all wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah son of Amoz. They told him, "This is what Hezekiah says, this day is a day of distress and rebuke and disgrace, as when children come to the point of birth and there is no strength to deliver them. Perhaps the Lord your God will hear all the words of the field commander, whom his master the king of Assyria has sent to ridicule the living God, and that he will rebuke him for the words the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, pray for the remnant that still survives." 2 Kings 19 verses 1 to 4. in the midst of these grave circumstances, Hezekiah's faith in God was evident as he sought guidance from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah delivered a message of hope and assurance from the Lord. Hezekiah was informed that the Assyrian king would not enter Jerusalem, nor shoot an arrow there. The Lord promised that he would defend the city and save it for his own sake and for the sake of his servant David. 2 Kings 19 verses 20-34, that very night, the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in the camp. When the people got up the next morning, they were all dead. So King Sennacherib of Assyria broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. One day, while he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his sons Adramelech and Sharezer killed him with the sword. They escaped to the land of Ararat, and his son Esarhaddon succeeded him as king. 2 Kings 19 verses 35-37, the dramatic victory of Hezekiah and the divine intervention in saving Jerusalem from the Assyrians serve as a powerful testament to God's faithfulness and the importance of unwavering trust in Him. This story highlights that even in seemingly impossible situations, divine intervention can change the course of events and deliver His people from overwhelming odds.